So, hello everyone, and welcome back to our homeroom. I'm so excited because this week we have something a little different. So this is my friend and colleague Lisa Chan, and let me introduce you a little bit about what she does. I think she's amazing. She's got some really great things to share with you that aren't necessarily my expertise. So I really wanted to get her on here to share with you, so she can give you some extra tips that are really, really helpful for our younger children, older children. It's just everything. So Lisa is a child behavior expert and a parent coach with over a decade of experience as a pediatric occupational therapist. So her background's a little different. I love that. She specializes in helping parents navigate challenging behaviors with a holistic approach. So she does a lot with sensory integration, neuroscience, and then she blends that in with child development. She is passionate about empowering parents with practical strategies. I agree, practical strategies are the best, that supports emotional regulation, executive functioning, sensory needs in children. And Lisa offers things like coaching. She's got online resources and social media, and she really brings families together. She offers, all of her approach is very compassionate. It's kind. She understands the parent's perspective. She knows how difficult, changing our behavior strategies can be. And she really just wants to offer solutions for parents who are really looking for those real solutions. And so I'm excited for you all to get a chance to hear from her today. So, hi, Lisa.
Hi, Kristen. Thank
So
you for
excited.
having me.
Yeah, I
Me
feel
too.
like this may be something we do a lot because we just had a brief conversation a couple weeks ago and I felt like we could have talked for hours. So we're going to try to keep it concise for the podcast today. But how about just start off with letting my listeners know a little bit about you and your background, what it is you do, and how what you're doing now, and how you kind of got into going from occupational therapy to helping parents.
Yes. So, well, a bit of my background, I have been working as a pediatric OT for over a decade now. My career really started in the school setting. So, really
Yes.
seeing a lot of what you've been seeing in the
Mhm.
schools. I got to work closely with the students and teachers, support staff, really helping kids who are struggling with sensory issues, behaviors at school, tension issues. And from that, I also worked in clinical settings,
Mm.
um, working directly with the kids, having different equipment to use, and then also in the home setting as well. So that really gave
Mm.
me a glimpse into what was going on inside the
Mhm.
home with families, which is such an important aspect that I know a lot of parents are not receiving. A
Yeah.
lot of parents, they have their kids getting support in school or getting support in a clinical setting, and really parents are not given any kind of guidance on what to do when they themselves are experiencing the challenges. And so that's where I really started to see a big gap in the service that
Yeah.
was being offered to kids, because we all know when our children have issues, it's not just a child issue. It
Mm.
is a family issue. It is a parental issue too that everyone
Yes.
needs to be involved with. But there really wasn't that support being offered to parents when I spoke to a lot of them. They were saying that I get like maybe 2 to 5 minutes with the therapist after the session, and that's kind of it. And
Yeah.
then I'm kind of left at home to figure out what to do, and I
Mm-hmm.
don't know what to do. Then I talk to, the pediatrician, who doesn't really give any kind of advice when it comes to things related to behaviors and sensory and executive functioning, right?
Yeah.
So what I did was I really leaned into that. I leaned
Yeah.
into the side of giving those parents the support through my parent coaching.
Yeah.
It was really since, I guess, COVID times, everyone kind of was at home, and that's where I really
Mm-hmm.
started to make that pivot, because I felt I could really make that connection with parents, since a lot of them were at home, or
Yeah.
we could connect
Exactly.
online. And that just kind of helped to grow what I'm doing today as a parent coach.
Yes, and I think that's such an interesting thing that you are pointing out the disconnect as a teacher. I often also felt like parents struggled with what to do at home. It's like I'm teaching them that was one of our biggest complaints in school was I don't know how to do this math at home. you know? And it's like, I want to help my child with their homework, but I don't know how to do this. And so I do feel like that is something that's an interesting conversation to have too at some point, is just that disconnect between school and home when it comes to all of the things. But I didn't even think about that with something like OT. Like, yeah, you're helping
Yeah.
them at school, and that's great. They're getting it while they're there, but they're spending half of their day at home with parents who are not experts in that, and how to give them the strategies they need. And I think I love that you're focused on that, and it is practical strategies that parents can actually do, because they don't have the expertise of an OT, but you can break it down and say, yeah, but here are some other things that can help. And I had several conferences over the years too with parents on behaviors that their children are seeing in school, and how they can help those behaviors at home, because it isn't just a child issue. Like you said, it's the family has such an influence on their children's behavior. And sometimes, yeah, we just expect they go to school and they do these things here, and then they come home and it's like separate, And I think that's such a
Yeah.
shame. I wish we had more of a bridge between school and home,
Exactly.
you know?
Exactly. Like a lot of the things that kids need to learn does start from home. Like when it comes to academics, that's coming from school and
Right.
trying to bridge that over to home. Sometimes parents aren't equipped where, we can hire a tutor to help them. But when it comes to something like emotional regulation, that's
Right.
not something that you just build in isolation in like a classroom. Like
Right.
emotional regulation is an everyday life. It's at school, it's at home too. Like,
Yeah.
for instance, if your child is, let's say, they're struggling with frustration, they have a low frustration tolerance, something doesn't go their way, and they, blow a fuse at home. They're just like angry and yelling and screaming. Well, the parents need to know what to do in those moments, right? It's not about just then, yeah, saying, my kid has anger problems. I need to send them to a therapist or to an OT to fix the problem.
Right.
It's really a holistic approach.
Yeah.
Yes, that can help in some degree to send your kids to therapy, but then at the same time, that's not the end all be all that will fix the solution or fix the problem, sorry. Your kid is still going to come home. And if there's
Right.
still triggers in the home and there's still sensory issues that are causing the triggers,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe it's the approach, the way
Mm-hmm.
that you're interacting with your child, because
Mm-hmm.
every kid is different. Some are more sensitive than others, and certain things trigger them more than other kids, that we have to adjust our approach. But if parents don't
Mm-hmm.
know that, then we're just going to
Right.
continue to
Yes.
perpetuate that problem. And we're thinking, my kid's in therapy, but it's not getting better. How come? Well, because again, it's that bridge,
Yeah.
it's the holistic approach, and there are things. Remember, our kids are at home for a significant portion of their day too. Like, yes, they're at school, but they're also at home
Yes.
during the afternoons, evenings, and then weekends. So there's so many pieces to that. And you as a parent, you are their main influence too. So you have a
Mm-hmm.
lot in that responsibility to build up the skills in emotional regulation
Mm-hmm.
or other social skills and
Mm-hmm.
communication skills as well.
Yes, because I think that, like you just said, if they have an academic issue, you can get a tutor. So it's almost like, yeah, but if they have an emotional issue, it's almost like you're stepping in as the coach there, or the tutor there. Like, here's how to handle and make this better at home. And I think that's important, like someone coming into the home, like you're saying, and helping them in that environment at home and giving them those strategies. Because yes, like going to therapy is great, but that's what, 1 hour a week, couple hours a week
Yeah.
maybe, and the rest
If
of the
you're
time.
lucky.
Exactly. So then they're coming home, and there's still all of that time there where parents need the strategies. It's like you're training parents to be the tutor, to help the child with their
Mhm.
emotions. It's like giving them the tools that they can help their child regulate, which is one of the questions I really wanted to delve into today, is those really children that I found one of your videos so interesting, because you called them sensory seeking children. So I've seen many children in the classroom setting and I know parents have many children who are these sensory seeking children. So can you describe what that is, as what kind of child that is, what that looks like, and then how you help those children, or what tools you give parents to help those sensory seeking children?
So sensory seeking behaviors, it does look very different if we're talking about the young kids
Mm-hmm.
versus kids who are let's say in later primary school, middle school,
Okay.
high school age, right? So if we're looking at sensory seeking behaviors in the small kids, kindergarten,
Mm-hmm.
grade 1, grade 2,
Oof,
these are the
that's
kids
well,
that
there are
are,
challenges.
yes, they're the ones that don't want to sit down.
Yeah.
They're the ones that don't want to sit down during circle time, during desk time, during work time. They just want to run around, touch everything. Maybe they're even still putting things in their mouth. And
Mm.
it's basically, they want to stimulate all of their different senses.
Hmm.
And it's because they have a higher threshold to things. So it's like they need more to feel fulfilled. Whereas like
Interesting.
for everyone else, it's kind of like, I got in, like I don't really need to move. Like I got enough during recess time. I can sit still. But for these kids, like they really need more of that in order for them to feel fulfilled within their body, or else they just feel like this antsy kind of like
Fancy. Mm-hmm.
energy that's stuck within them. So that's
Yes.
what we see in the younger kids. And it can be quite problematic, as I'm sure you know.
Yes.
And as a teacher, you see how much they cannot focus and they cannot do the
Right.
things, and you're on top of them
Yes.
all the time,
And the
right?
structure in a classroom is, unfortunately, it sits still, don't move for long extended periods of time. And I mean, I substituted one day in a kindergarten class and I literally went home crying. Like, I was like, because most of the children in that room were those sensory seeking children. And I just remember thinking, I felt bad for the children because I didn't know how to meet their needs. And I felt like the system itself, a lot of it's out of my control as a teacher. I can't change much of the structure of we hardly have any freedom in the classroom. But
Hmm.
like I have to provide desks and chairs and we have to get through these things. I have to get my children reading, in kindergarten. I've got to get them writing it's so much pressure that then I'm not
Yeah.
able to sit and really provide needs for those children that need that extra. So yes, in the young children, it is a challenge to really work with them and try to provide those needs. So what's something then to help those children? And then yeah, I want to hear about the older children because I'm absolutely sure I taught fourth grade, so I'm absolutely sure I had those children then. I just know it looked a little different. But what about the little ones? What can you do with that kindergarten or first grader?
Well, it's really trying to find the right expectations for those kids. Because like you said,
Mm,
like there's some kids that can manage. They can sit and do the work and sit during circle time. But then for kids who are sensory seekers that can't, and we keep the same expectations for them, we really set them up for
for
failure.
failure.
Right?
Yep.
We end up doing is yelling at them, telling them to sit down. All they're hearing is just all those negative messages. So we want to avoid that. We want to give them opportunities and to help fulfill the sensory needs that they have. So giving them, certain jobs around the classroom. Can
Yep.
they be the ones that stack the chairs, like the little chairs? They
Yes.
can they can do that. Like
I
that's
love that.
a perfectly good responsibility for a sensory seeker kid, or get them to be the ones. I don't know if you guys do you guys still use blackboards?
Yep. Whiteboard, a
Okay,
lot
we
of
still do.
whiteboards. Yeah.
Whiteboards. They
Uh-huh.
can be the ones to wipe down the whiteboards, clean them up, right? Give them
Yes,
opportunities
to
to move around,
move their body. Yeah.
move their bodies, have certain sections of the classroom where you have different things that they can do where they get to move
Mhm.
their body. So if let's say it is circle time and they really cannot manage, rather than just trying to force them to sit down, let them have a break where they can have a movement break. Let them move
Mhm.
around. And
Mhm.
I mean, this is of course more ideal if you have extra staff like an ECE,
Yeah.
EA in your classroom to kind of be that to supervise.
Yeah.
Um, but if not, you can let your child be the one to pass the book
Mhm.
around to all the
Mhm.
other kids, paper
Mhm.
around. So
Mhm.
finding ways to just incorporate movement for those
Mhm.
kids. Because
Mhm.
what you're going to see is that they're going to get what they're craving for. They're
Mhm.
not being told negative messages that,
Yes.
like essentially telling them that you need to sit down, you need to do this. You're telling them that there's something wrong with you
Yes.
because why all the other kids are doing it and you can't. We don't want to tell those messages.
No, they'll
And
stick
especially they're
around for a
so young,
long time.
it will
Yep.
stick in their minds. So give them the opportunities, and then what you're going to see is better cooperation, less behaviors in your classroom,
Mhm.
and you're not going to be as stressed in the
Right.
class.
Right. What about parents at home that might be seeing the sensory? What are some things they can do at home for those little ones?
I was going to say that because
Mhm.
there's definitely a bridge that we need to make here because parents are definitely going to see these types of behaviors at home. And it's the same concept. It's really giving your child the opportunity to move. Are you taking
Yeah.
them outside to play enough?
Yeah.
Are you getting them involved moving around at home? Get them involved in things to
Hmm.
do around the house. Because a lot of the times we
Yes.
feel like as parents, like we get home with their child, now it's time to unpack everything, clean up, prepare dinner, and then we want our kids to just kind of sit and stay put. And then when
Yeah.
they're not, you're like, you gotta sit down. And then you're frantic because you're running between the kitchen and them. Well, let's get them involved, get them
Yeah.
busy doing something. Then
Mm.
that's going to help them to focus on what they're doing, right? Give
I
them the
love
opportunity to
that.
clean,
Yeah.
like I have a little one, and I get her to just like, clean up things. Like give
Yeah.
her a little dustpan, put some pom-poms around, go collect them.
That is
Right?
great. Yeah, and it
So,
gives them a sense of capability too. I know giving special jobs to students at school with those ones that were power seeking, so the ones that were really wanting that power and control, give them power and control because
mhm,
it helps feed the message that they're capable, that we value them, that we see that they are capable. So,
yeah.
it doesn't hurt. It cannot hurt. But especially if they're having a teacher that is at school that isn't maybe as good at understanding that, and they might be getting more net messages that are negative at school, it's so important
Mhm.
that when they're at home, we're giving them special jobs. I see that
Yes.
you are so good at organizing. I remember a second grade student I had. She wanted to really be the boss of the school of the classroom. So I gave her special jobs. She was the one who made sure the lights were off when we left the room. She was the one who organized the bookshelf. As soon as she was done with her work, she would start to get to where she'd start wanting to boss other kids or whatever. So I just gave her special job after special job, and it always came with, I notice you are so good at organizing stuff. Can you take my files? I'd have file folders or whatever for reading the next day. Can you put them in order, or can you file these worksheets in the folders? Whatever. Oh, it not only gave her something to do with her body, but it really fulfilled that need for capability. So it really will help combat any negative messages that are going on. So I love that idea of giving them like a
Yeah.
special job at home. Even
And
if you have to create the special job, like there's pom-poms all over the floor. Oh,
exactly. But
yes.
it's really like what you're describing is it's really tapping into your child's strength.
Yes.
It's very common for us as parents to see the negative, and it's
Yes.
harder for us to see the positive and the
Yes.
strength. And it's learning to put on these new glasses of yours to see the thing that you feel bothers you and to turn it around into something else.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a great example.
Mm-hmm.
Kids who just want that power, the more you try to take away the power and you try to tell them what to do, you will face
Oh.
battle after
Mm-hmm.
battle. And what you're doing is reinforcing that they have no power, and
Yep.
it makes them want to gain that power back even more.
Stronger.
Then
Yep.
you're in a very bad predicament there. Rather
Yes.
than that doing that, find what they're good at and
Mm-hmm.
redirect them to that. Now you're
Mm-hmm.
feeding them all of those good feelings, and now
Mm-hmm.
they're just like, wow, I'm capable. I
Yes.
I have power in this,
Yes,
right? And
I have choice and capability, then they won't need to fight you for it because you're giving it to them. So,
exactly.
yes, instead of seeing a child who is power struggle and fighting and defiant, look at that as a child who wants control, responsibility, power, and give it to them. That, give them those opportunities to rise up, and those children, because those children want it so much.
Yes. And
So
we don't want to
awesome.
stifle that either.
No,
Like
right.
imagine like if we push that down on them at a young age. Like don't we actually want that when they become adults. We want kids who
Mm-hmm.
feel like they want to take charge, they want to do things. But if we're telling them at a young age that no, you need to follow the rules and just stay put, then that sends them that message that I cannot speak up. I cannot be who I am. I'll
Mm-hmm.
just
Right.
follow the line, and that's it. And like we don't want to raise kids like that. We
No, it'll
want them to
dim their
find their own strengths.
Yes, it can
Yes.
dim their light or, make them feel wrong for speaking up. So then they get into a relationship or a job where they feel that they can't speak up because if they do, they're going to be wrong or punished or things like that. So that's super important. Okay, so for our older children who may be sensory seeking also, does it look different in some ways?
It's definitely more subtle. right?
Yeah.
Like you said, the kids, they learn over time. If they're told that you need to sit still, you need to sit still, like eventually the kids are gonna get it. Like
Yes.
they gotta stay still, and they also develop impulse control skills at,
Yes.
to some degree, that they're able to hold back. But at the end of the day, they're still internally, they still feel like they need some sort of movement and some sort of sensory input. That you see those kids that are fidgeting a lot. They're constantly fidgeting and they can't focus. So we see
Mm.
that a lot with our
Mm-hmm.
ADHD
Mm-hmm.
type kids who
Yeah.
they're just really having a hard time focusing on the work. They're easily distracted. Their mind's over here, their eyes are over here, and they just cannot seem to get any work done. And then the
Mm.
problem that teachers face, parents face, is that you're always on top of them. Hey, focus, get your work done. Remember, you got this question to do. And you end up feeling like a nag to these kids,
Yeah.
right? And really what's happening is that their bodies are they're overwhelmed. Like they can't hold themselves still, so they're just trying to find ways to stimulate themselves,
Yeah.
that it's looking like distraction,
Mm-hmm.
when really for those kids what they need most is chunking work down and giving them movement breaks in between. So
Oh,
think
yeah,
of it
that's great.
like a battery. It's like we have a battery, and for these kids, their batteries drain more quickly than others. So if their batteries drain down to the bottom, they're gonna try to fidget to try to like distract themselves and try to like rejuvenate
Their
themselves.
battery.
But
Yeah.
it's not really giving them anything. Maybe it's just kind of like doing a little bit,
Mm.
when really it's like, okay, when they've drained out, like we got to give them an actual break. Let them move
Mm.
around. Let them go get a drink of water, some ice cold
Mm-hmm.
water, to just like give them that sensory input. Let them do
Mm-hmm.
some heavy work, right?
Mm-hmm.
Carry the garbage bin down to the janitor's room, or if you're
Mm.
at home, help me carry
Mm.
the laundry basket up to your room,
Mm-hmm.
or take out the garbage for me.
Right.
Like things like
Right.
that can just give them
Okay.
that body break
Yeah.
and help them to feel better.
Yeah.
So once they've done that, then it's like, okay, so we've done our little break, and of course, like for those kids, we got to put a timer so they are
Yes.
time aware of like how much
Yep.
time you can be doing this, because we know
Mm-hmm.
they tend to divert, and then
Mm-hmm.
you can't rein them back.
Mm-hmm.
So have like a visual timer there.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna take a 5 minute break, do all
Mm-hmm.
these heavy work things. After the timer goes off, we're gonna come right back, and we're gonna focus on a small chunk of
Mm-hmm.
work again, and just
Mm-hmm.
do that. And it just helps them to focus
Mm-hmm.
and get their sensory
Mm-hmm.
fix, and then come back, and you just kind of you alternate between the
Yeah.
two until you can get the thing done.
And that's great. That's a great strategy. I didn't, and I've given strategies to my students that I work with who have ADHD about the chunking of the work and the taking the breaks. But usually, because I work with a lot of 11 and up, age 11 and up, so usually their break wants to be consisted of social media or something. But I think the active, telling them that in their break, go walk somewhere in the house, go get a snack, like you said, go to the bathroom, go do some jumping jacks or like a physical activity. Because it's almost like, I think of it almost like an opposite of someone, there's the opposite scenario where, like introverts, for instance, if they go to a party, they need to recharge alone. Like they need to rest, and that recharges your battery. But almost looking at it like ADHD students maybe needing, their recharge needs to be physical movement. Their recharge needs to be
Yes.
something sensory to help them. And it always does. It feels like you're saying that they're very active. I always feel like they're looking for something to just bring it ground themselves or something, and that's why
Yeah.
the fidgets help a lot. I had one student in fourth grade who, I don't know that he was ADHD, but had overexcitabilities. Gifted students often have overexcitabilities, which can be confused with ADHD. And he got one of those chairs that's like a wobble chair. So when he did his work, he could do this, and he
Yes.
was
Yeah.
sitting in a little stool that solved like everything, just having the stool, you know?
Yeah, something as simple as that. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and at home too.
You're at home,
I've
yeah.
recommended that to parents as well. Get a wobble stool, or I think they're also called like hokey stools. You can get a
Okay.
peanut ball, or even just like a yoga exercise ball, so
Mm-hmm.
they can just sit and bounce.
Bounce.
That can really
Mm-hmm.
help,
Mm-hmm.
because it actually gets them more focused
Mm-hmm.
for our sensory seeking kids.
Yes, and a lot of my ADHD students, they've got to have that lo-fi music on in the background, that
Yeah.
helps them concentrate on, we think that it would be the opposite. A lot of people would say they need it quiet so that they can study. But actually, many times those students need that sensory input of the music. So I think that's just such a great way to understand our sensory seeking children. It's so common in schools. And I think that sometimes I feel like our children are just being born more sensory, and so this school system is just more and more not helping those children. And I just wish we could adapt the school system to be a little less sitting still, a little more exploring, a little less projects on the floor. Let's build something together and do something. If those students do so much better, but it doesn't hurt the other students either. That's the thing.
It's beneficial for all of them.
Everyone, the more active learning we have, the better, and even at home, like I've guided parents with homework. Have your child, if there's things they're having to memorize or learn, have them for certain children that have an acting or creative flair, have them act it out for you, or do charades, or do it in a way that's moving your body, so that it's not just sitting and having to memorize flashcards. So I love that idea of really integrating movement as much as we can for those students. So yay, I love that. That's great. Okay, so I had another one of my favorite topics to talk about that I really wanted to bring up with you today, because I was watching a few of your videos where you were talking about boundaries, specifically in a lot of the modern parenting styles, like gentle parenting, and how sometimes gentle parenting can be confused with permissive parenting, and that really the difference is just boundaries. And I am a huge advocate of boundaries. I think, of course, obviously our children need belonging. They need to feel respect. They need to feel valued, loved. They need the encouragement. They need all the goody love stuff. But they also have got to have limits and structure and boundaries and routines. Those things keep children safe. And I think that because so many parents themselves were raised with harsh boundaries, so they had parents that used punishment or shame or humiliation or fear or over controlling strategies, that I think so many parents struggle with how to do boundaries correctly, that there is a way to do natural, logical consequences that are kind, they're firm, but they help train us into these limits and structures that are necessary for our home to run smoothly and for a relationship. Any relationship you get in has to be a mix of that connection and belonging and love, but also, I also can't have you speak to me this way. Like, there's also has to be boundaries. So I just would like to hear because gentle parenting, I kind of know a little bit about it, but not a lot. So tell me your thoughts on boundaries with gentle parenting versus permissive, and what are your thoughts on that?
So right now, gentle parenting is become this kind of like flashy word out there in the parenting realm. We all and we believe that gentle parenting is the right approach, but right now it's being misconstrued. There's a lot of misconceptions around it, and I think it's because the word gentle just kind of throws people off. We think gentle just kind of means like, okay, we don't ever like raise our voice. We kind of just like, we don't want anyone to get upset. We don't want to have conflict. And that's what's pulling parents into the permissive side.
Yes.
Our generation, we grew up with a lot more stricter parents. And so because of that, a lot of us have been, I'm kind of loosely using the term like traumatized from that.
Yes.
So we're trying to do the opposite. Like, we're really just swinging on this pendulum to the other side, where we don't want to be as strict, because we know how much that hurt us as kids. And we want to be emotionally in tune with our kids, because a lot of our parents, they didn't know to be like that. They thought you had to just be firm and dismiss any feelings. So we're trying to do more of that. But then we get trapped in this thing where we feel our kids feeling so much that we start to get scared of it. Then we don't know how to put the boundaries down, because we don't want to upset our kids. We kind of want to like, I want to keep the peace. I want to be friends with my kids. That I don't want to tell them no and upset them, and it's going to trigger a meltdown. So I'm just going to kind of like be lenient and kind of give in. And that's where that's where we get trapped in that. But
Mm-hmm.
the truth is, true gentle parenting is when you have firm boundaries in a loving way. Like you're still kind
Yes.
about it, you're still loving,
Yes.
but you have to have boundaries because kids do not know the boundaries or parameters of life. They come into this world just thinking everything is a free for all, but it's not. We have rules, we have expectations. And
Mm-hmm.
as parents, that is our number one job is to set those parameters for them so they
Mm-hmm.
know what is appropriate and what is not. And
Mm-hmm.
so when our kids talk back to us and we
Right.
try, we're like, oh, we don't use that language and we try to be all soft and like, well, they're not really learning that
Mm-hmm.
that is not respectful, that we cannot use those words, right? And
Mm-hmm.
that's where we have to be firm. We have to show them
Mm-hmm.
that it can't just be your way because
Mm-hmm.
I am still the parent of this
Mm-hmm.
household. And
Mm-hmm.
that's where we really need to step into our leadership as
Yes,
parents.
that's what I was just gonna
We're
say. The
really,
leadership,
yeah, because like past generations, it's like they really showed that authoritarian like
like a
leadership,
boss, more of a boss
like a
type of
boss, and
thing.
like we
Yes.
were the kids and it was
Yes.
their way or the highway kind of
Yes.
thing. Now we're like, we want to like even out the playing field and kind of be on par with our kids. And
Mm-hmm.
to some degree, I agree in terms of respect. Like we
Yes.
should treat our kids with respect, not treat them
Equally.
like
Right.
equally. Like they're
And
humans, they
value.
have feelings.
Yes. Right.
Right. And so yes, in that regard, we should hold more respect with our kids, but that doesn't mean we drop our authority with them. It
Right.
means that we still have to be
Lead.
overseeing them, leading
Yes.
them, teaching them the right way to do
Mm-hmm.
things and to
Mm-hmm.
not do things.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to be okay to say no, and that might, it will likely, not might, it will likely upset them.
Yep. Yeah.
And they're going to have a meltdown or a tantrum. And we have to learn to be okay in that discomfort of their
Mm-hmm.
tantrum. What I see is that a lot of parents today, it's like they're afraid of their kids. I said this already, but they're afraid of their
Mm-hmm.
kids' emotions
Yes.
because their parents made them so afraid of emotions. So now when we see our kids in discomfort, we're like, oh no,
Mm.
I have to make them feel happy and okay. That you try to like jump in, swoop in, fix all the problems, give them all these solutions. And it's like sometimes you have to learn to just let them be and cry because that actually builds emotional regulation. If you can stay calm in that moment
Mm-hmm.
and let them work through those feelings,
Mm-hmm.
validate, like I get you're upset that you couldn't have, X, Y, and Z.
Mm-hmm.
But right now it is not the time for it.
Right.
And just holding firm on that boundary,
Mm-hmm.
not caving just
Mm-hmm.
because they're crying, just because they're pleading
Right.
with you,
Yep.
right? That actually teaches them to build frustration tolerance. And
Yes.
they
Oh, that's
learn,
so great. The
right? They're,
frustration
they're going to learn
tolerance. Mm-hmm.
over time that, when mom or dad says this, even though
Mm-hmm.
it makes me feel upset and frustrated, like it is the rule.
Mm-hmm.
And the tantrums will decrease over time if
Mm-hmm.
you can be consistent.
Yes. And yeah, and there is a way to do that that is kind. You're not coming in saying no just for no reason. There is a reason you're saying no. So you don't have to say no. Sometimes I feel like parents, we'll say no from an angry place because we've waited to say no for so long until now our child has asked us, 3 or 4 times, and now we're, no, stop asking, where if we just from the very beginning are like, nope, that's not going to work. Like, I think that when we keep in mind, and I've just said this recently, so my listeners have heard it a million times, but if we keep in mind that boundaries are set in place to help provide health and safety from everyone in the home, like my job as a parent is to be the leader of this home, right? To make sure that it functions correctly, that everybody's health and safety is in order, and that everyone's rights and freedoms are also being respected. So, I'm not there to boss or overstep, but I am there to oversee that things are running functionally. So I also need to make sure, for instance, that, my child stays healthy. So no, we can't have 5 lollipops today. Does that child want 5 lollipops? Maybe. And they're going to ask for them. And they are, like you said, they're going to be disappointed when they don't get that. But I know as the leader of the realm, the one in charge of the home, that 5 lollipops is not healthy. If I am talking to a friend, I've seen this so many times too. If I have a friend over or I'm on the phone and my child wants my attention at that moment, it is okay. The overall, I don't get a lot of time with this friend. She's over here very rarely. If you just give me a few minutes, don't interrupt, let me finish my conversation, and then yes, but now is not the moment for me. I want to hear what you have to say, but I can't concentrate because I'm over here doing this important thing right now. And I think that's okay too. Like, I can, if my child wants to tell me something and I'm in the middle of a text, and so many times too, we'll just ignore them and just, hey, I want to hear what you have to say, but just a sec, let me finish my text first. Like, it doesn't have to be rude or mean or anything. It's just letting them understand, like you said, it's not all about them. When they grow up and they become an adult and have adult relationships, they also need to realize that the other person in the relationship has rules and boundaries and structures that we need to respect. You don't want your child growing up and feeling like they can talk to anybody however it is they want to talk to people. It is normal and natural that you're going to respect another human person too. And mom is the first one to be able to and should demand that respect. I shouldn't be treated disrespectfully for my child. So I think sometimes, yes, the talking too I see that very common, is that parents are not sure how to just say, don't speak to me that way. That's just disrespectful. And like you said, they try to be a little too gentle about it. And sometimes you have to be like, no, you're not going to speak to me that way. If that's going to continue, let's take a break, because I don't want to get in a fight with you, but I don't want to be spoken to that way. So yeah, I think boundaries in all different areas. It's the health and safety of everyone, and rights and freedoms. And one of my rights is to be spoken to respectfully. So that is also important. Boundaries are not punishment. They're not the same thing. It is still, again, it's just an important part. It provides our children safety. They need to know that someone in the house is in charge and is keeping everybody on target. And that's really what the
Yes.
boundaries are about. And so I think that somehow the gentle parenting, I want to get that information out to parents who might be hearing about gentle parenting, so they understand that it is not permissive parenting. Gentle parenting does promote boundaries. So just to make sure that they're implementing the boundaries too, and reading more about that, and rather than just giving up on the boundary piece, because then you're going to slip into permissive. And that's not good for our kids either, because then they don't feel safety, and then they're trying to take over and figure out how to take charge, because clearly, we're not in charge, so they're trying to figure it out. So yeah, I just think boundaries are such an important part, but I think just overall as humans, we're struggling with how to do that, even in adult relationship. I mean, I don't know how many times I've seen on Instagram, tips for adults on how to have boundaries with people.
Yep.
So
Exactly.
it's a good model for your children for when they grow up. They can see what healthy boundaries looks like, and respecting other people. It's a give and take there. But yeah, it's a tricky thing for all of us. We're struggling with that. So I loved everything you have to say so much. I can't wait to just keep in contact with you, keep our connection going. We need to do this again sometime in the future, because there's been so many of your social media posts that I've watched, and I thought, oh, we could talk about that. We could talk about that. So we'll have to keep in touch with each other and do this again, because this is
Yes.
just so great. And what I love is you offer, not only the occupational therapist side of things, but also more with the young children. I taught fourth and fifth grade, and then work a lot with 11 and up. So I love having you on, because you can really help any of my parents with a lot of those younger children that are dealing with some of those challenges early on. All right. So if my parents are hearing things and they're like, oh my gosh, she could help me in so many ways, what are some things that you offer for parents, and how can they get in touch with you? What's a great way to find your content?
Yeah, so if you are a parent who's struggling with your child's big emotions, like emotional regulation, tantruming, lots of aggressive behaviors, and you're not sure how to really navigate that whole space, because there is a lot when it comes to your child's emotions that is being triggered. And so I've
Yeah.
created a course that really
Ooh,
helps to unpack what is really the root of emotional regulation,
that's
and
great.
why does your child become dysregulated in the
Oh,
first place.
ooh, that's
So when you can
great.
understand, yeah, I
Hmm.
have these 5 pillars of when there's a problem in any of these five, that is the place where you need to start working on, because that's the root problem to why
Yeah.
your child's getting dysregulated in the first place. And some examples are It might be sensory based. Their sensory needs aren't being met.
Mm-hmm.
There's also communication wise. Some of our kids,
Mm-hmm.
they range in their communication. Some of our kids that are just a little bit behind with
Mm-hmm.
their language development, that it's going to be harder for them to communicate. So the way you communicate to them really matters. And also your own personal mindset and how
Yeah,
you approach it, your attitude, that is probably the number one thing. Like I have to just like flat out say, parental
really,
attitude is the number one thing that can
really.
make a huge difference in your children. And so
That is
that is a
so
big,
interesting.
big pillar within
Mm-hmm.
why a lot of kids get dysregulated, and parents having to do a lot of internal reflection and work on
Mm-hmm.
themselves to
Mm-hmm.
help really facilitate better
Mm-hmm.
regulation in their kids. So this course really unpacks that.
Yeah, and I love that it's a course because you're in Toronto. So,
Yes.
so that way parents can get your information even if they don't live locally. So that's amazing that it's a course. That's awesome. What else? And you have coaching,
I
right?
also do one-on-one coaching.
Okay.
So I actually work with any parent. You can be anywhere in the world.
Mhm.
I have a lot of US clients
Yeah.
and some in also the UK as well. So it
Mm.
really doesn't matter
Yeah.
where you are because we do everything virtual. And what I do is really help to get to the root of what is going on within your family,
Yeah.
specifically your child's behavior and how it's impacting your
Mhm.
family, and
Mhm.
really how to find solutions so that you can start feeling more in control. A lot of families I work with feel like they've just lost the control in their home. The child's kind of running the show, their emotions
Mm.
are running the show. They don't really know how to parent their child because they have unique needs,
Yeah.
many of which have autism, ADHD, and
Mhm.
that makes a big difference. Like you cannot just parent your child with those challenges like how you would parent any other child because they're coming from a place where there is a lacking skill and there are sensory challenges going on
Mhm.
that you have to know that in
Mhm.
order to know what your approach to parenting is like. So that's why a lot of parents who are raising kids with these challenges are facing a lot of problems, and it's impacting their relationship with their kids, relationships with their spouse because they're
Yep.
fighting a lot
Yep.
more, and then their own mental health as parents is really going down because imagine just being drained every day from all
Mhm.
of these negative interactions.
Yeah.
So we really get to the root of what is going on with your child that is causing the behaviors, that's causing all of these problems, and
Mhm.
how can we get to those root problems
Mhm.
that that makes sense for you?
Yeah.
Because every family is so different.
Right.
I cannot just give one solution to one parent and say it's going to work for the next. It really
Yeah.
is dependent
Yep.
because you have different family structures, you have different belief systems,
Mhm.
cultural differences
Mhm.
that impact how you are interacting with your kids and your family.
Mhm.
So we got to take all those into consideration. Um, and really, yeah, we get into the nitty-gritties of that, and I
Mhm.
help really take parents week to week and guide them through and really check in on them, hold them accountable for what they need to do to make change in their home.
Yeah. Oh, that's so awesome. That's great. And I will make sure to I'll link your information below. And I know we talked about maybe I always provide like a worksheet for my parents or something they can download and print out. So if you have something like that, we'll attach that into my website as well, so they can always print it and reference it if they're not ready right now, but they might be later. That way they'll have your information. Because yeah, I know so many of the students I've worked with. I know many of the people that are listening have these kind of challenges with their students, so their children. So I think that's just really helpful for them. So thank you so much for coming on, and I can't wait to do this again. We'll think of some
Yes.
other really fun topics to talk about because I love hearing all of your perspective of things that I hadn't thought about. So I love that so much. So thank you so much, and we'll see you
Thank
soon.
you, Kristen. Yes,
Thank
see you
you.
soon.
All right.